This is WorldView Today with a special report on the escalating tensions in the Middle East, where Iran's nuclear ambitions and Israel's preemptive actions are pushing the region and the world toward a dangerous precipice. We do not want war, but if war comes, Iran will not be the one wiped off the map. These were the defiant words of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, issued amid rising hostilities with Israel. But when your adversary possesses nuclear weapons, and you do not, is such a declaration courage or delusion? This is not just Iran's question. In 2025, it's a question for the entire world as the Middle East transforms from a regional power struggle into a global nuclear chess game. Israel has long possessed nuclear weapons, an open secret no one officially acknowledges. Iran, meanwhile, insists its nuclear program is peaceful, yet continues to enrich uranium to 84% purity, perilously close to the 90% threshold required for a nuclear weapon. The United States has vowed military intervention if Iran crosses that line, but Washington remains hamstrung by domestic politics and the ghosts of its wars in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. So who is playing with fire? And is that fire nuclear? In January 2025, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, reported that Iran had achieved 84% uranium enrichment, the highest level ever recorded, while Tehran maintained its program is for civilian purposes. Why is 84% alarming? Because a nuclear weapon requires just 90% enrichment, meaning Iran is mere technical steps away from transitioning from a civilian program to a global threat. Israel's response? Silence, officially. But in early February, Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, conducted a daring raid on an underground laboratory in Isfahan, destroying centrifuges and dealing a significant blow to Iran's nuclear program. The message was clear. Tel Aviv will not wait for a bomb to detonate before acting. Iran retaliated by targeting Jewish-linked facilities in Europe through proxy groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. The violence is spreading, but the real danger lies not in the current skirmishes, it's in the systematic escalation. Since 2020, Israel has repeatedly struck Iranian targets in Syria, Lebanon, and even inside Iran. But never before has the prospect of direct war between these two nations been so tangible. Why? Because if Iran nears a nuclear weapon, Israel will see it as a point of no return. Israel doesn't trust negotiations. It believes in prevention through action. In 1981, it bombed Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. In 2007, it destroyed Syria's Al-Kibar reactor. If Iran becomes the third target, will the consequences be far greater? The possibility of Israel launching a unilateral strike on Iran is very real. Ironically, Israel's own nuclear ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying its arsenal, cuts both ways. It deters adversaries, but also drives them to pursue nuclear weapons to level the playing field. The paradox is stark. Fear of destruction fuels the creation of destructive weapons. This isn't just an Iran-Israel conflict. The United States has been a central player from the start, despite efforts to maintain distance. In 2015, the U.S. spearheaded the JCPOA nuclear deal, lifting sanctions in exchange for Iran halting enrichment. In 2018, then-President Trump tore up the agreement, reimposing sanctions and igniting the current spiral. President Biden's attempts to revive the deal failed, and by 2024, the U.S. settled for an unspoken arrangement. Iran would keep enrichment below 60%. Now, Iran has surpassed that threshold. What will America do? Military intervention is unlikely. After the Afghanistan withdrawal, Washington has little appetite for another Middle East war. Further sanctions. Iran's economy, bolstered by ties with China and off-the-books oil sales, is nearly immune. Negotiations? Tehran no longer trusts U.S. promises. Every path seems a dead end. Enter the proxies. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps are primed to act if war erupts. In early 2025, drone attacks from Yemen on Israeli merchant ships tripled compared to the previous year. Hezbollah fired rockets across borders, and Iran-backed groups stirred unrest in West Bank refugee camps. Israel, however, is not alone. While the U.S. avoids direct combat, the USS Eisenhower carrier patrols the Mediterranean, and Israel's Iron Dome defenses are bolstered by $3.85 billion in annual U.S. military aid. Washington's support for Tel Aviv is unmistakable, if unspoken. What happens if Iran or its proxies launch a major attack, say sinking an Israeli cargo ship, killing dozens of civilians? Israel will retaliate. But if that retaliation involves long-range missiles on Tehran, it's a declaration of war. If Iran is cornered, will it burn the temple down, testing a nuclear device, even a single one, in a mutually assured destruction gambit? A more chilling question: has Iran already tested one in secret? Some Western experts suspect that by late 2024, Iran had enough fissile material for a crude nuclear device. Not yet a missile, but enough to prove capability. Potential test sites include the Dasht-e-Lut Desert or underground facilities at Fordow. Anomalous radiation signals have been detected near Iran's eastern border, though evidence remains inconclusive. If these suspicions are true, and Israel believes them, war is not a matter of if, but when. That when could arrive at any moment, triggered by a single broken link in the chain of tensions: an assassination, a drone strike, or a misread signal mistaken for a war declaration. This time, chaos won't be limited to rifles and rockets. It will involve reactors, uranium warheads, and radioactive clouds. Russia and China loom large in this equation, viewing the Middle East as a battleground to shape global order. For China, Iran is a linchpin in its Belt and Road Initiative. Since 2021, Beijing and Tehran have deepened a 25-year, $400 billion partnership trading oil and minerals for infrastructure and surveillance technology. China publicly backs diplomacy, but indirectly supplies components for Iran's advanced centrifuges through black market networks, ensuring Iran's survival without sparking war. A conflict would divert U.S. focus from the Pacific, where tensions over Taiwan simmer, a scenario Beijing welcomes. Russia sees Iran as a fellow pariah state. Since the Ukraine war began, Moscow has relied on Iran's Shahed 136 drones to pound Kiev's infrastructure, trading radar systems, jamming tech, and cash in return. A volatile Middle East spikes oil prices, benefiting Russia, and distracts NATO from Eastern Europe. Moscow wants Iran nuclear enough to cause trouble, but not so much as to ignite all-out war or rejoin the JCPOA and align with the West. Europe, meanwhile, is desperate to prevent Iran from going nuclear and Israel from acting alone, but lacks the clout to steer events. European leaders issue calls for restraint and transparency, but Iran distrusts them, and Israel ignores them. What about nations like Vietnam? A Middle East war would hit closer to home than you might think. Vietnam imports over 60% of its oil from the region. If the Strait of Hormuz closes for even a week, fuel prices could surge 40 to 50%, driving up production costs and inflation. A U.S. distracted by the Middle East might weaken its South China Sea presence, allowing China to escalate militarization in the Spratly Islands. And if Iran proves a sanctioned state can near nuclear status, it could inspire North Korea or others to follow, destabilizing global non-proliferation norms. A nightmare for a diplomacy-focused nation like Vietnam. Can this war be avoided? History suggests major conflicts rarely start with a single decision. They emerge from missteps, overreactions, and blind faith in deterrence. If Israel senses time running out, it will act. If Iran feels cornered, it will lash out. If the U.S. is forced to pick a side, it won't stay neutral. When that happens, bombs won't remain in labs. They'll light up the Middle Eastern night sky. The question is no longer, will it happen? But, Who will fire the first shot? Thank you for watching WorldView Today. Stay informed, stay engaged, and join us tomorrow for more in-depth coverage of the world's most pressing issues.